In 2034, humanity will drop a nuclear-powered helicopter into the haze of an alien moon. It's about the size of a Toyota Corolla. It has 8 rotors, skids instead of wheels, and a brain that can think for itself. It isn't going to Mars. We've done Mars. This machine is heading for the only other solid body in the solar system with a thick atmosphere. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a world that feels hauntingly like a frozen, toxic version of Earth. It has rain, rivers, lakes, and seas. It has clouds that drift through a thick orange sky. But the water is liquid methane, the stones are frozen water ice, and the sand dunes are made of plastic. This is the Dragonfly mission, and it is arguably the most audacious, robotic explorer we have ever built. We aren't just sending a lander to sit in one spot and dig a hole, and we aren't sending a rover to drive 3 miles in 5 years. We are sending a drone, a relocatable lander that can fly, sample, and move on. This changes the fundamental math of planetary exploration. We are trading wheels for wings. But to understand why we're doing this, you have to understand the target. Titan is a paradox wrapped in a mystery. It shouldn't have an atmosphere. It's smaller than Earth, so its gravity is weak. By all the rules of planetary formation, its gas should have leaked away into space billions of years ago. Yet, Titan has an atmosphere 1.5 times denser than Earth's. Standing on the surface feels like standing at the bottom of a swimming pool. That thick air, combined with low gravity, about 14% of Earth's, creates a miracle of physics. It is the easiest place in the solar system to fly. Easier than Earth, much easier than Mars. A human on Titan could strap cardboard wings to their arms, flap them, and actually take off. Dragonfly is going to exploit that physics. It's an octocopter designed to leapfrog across the dunes. But getting it there is a nightmare. It's nearly 1 billion miles away. The journey takes 7 years. 7 years of silence in the dark, coasting through the vacuum. When it finally arrives, it hits the top of Titan's atmosphere at 16,000 miles per hour. It needs a heat shield, but not just for heat, it needs stability. Titan's atmosphere is so thick that the entry phase takes a long time. It's a slow, dangerous deceleration. Parachutes deploy, the heat shield drops, and then, the moment of truth. Dragonfly falls away from its back shell. It is free-falling through the orange smog. It doesn't wait to hit the ground. It fires its rotors in midair. It catches itself, a powered flight initiated during the descent. It scans the ground below with LiDAR and cameras, looking for a place that isn't covered in boulders. It has to do this alone. The radio signal to Earth takes over an hour to make the trip. We can't steer it. We can't shout, "Watch out for that rock." It has to see the rock and decide to move. It touches down on the Shangri-La dune fields, and for the first time in decades, we are back on Titan. We've only been there once before. The Huygens probe landed in 2005. It survived for about 90 minutes. It sent back one image from the surface, just one. It showed us round pebbles. That single image changed everything. You only get round pebbles from tumbling in a river. That picture proved liquid flows on Titan. But Huygens was a battery-powered bucket. It died when the batteries froze. Dragonfly is different. It carries the heart of a nuclear weapon. It's powered by an MMRTG, a multi-mission radioisotope thermoelectric generator. Inside, there is plutonium-238. As it decays, it gets hot. That heat is converted directly into electricity. It's not a lot of power. It's about enough to run a few light bulbs. You couldn't fly a drone on it in real time. So Dragonfly has a routine. It sleeps, it charges, and then it bursts into action. Titan's days are long. 1 day on Titan is nearly 16 days on Earth. For 8 Earth days, the sun is up. For 8 Earth days, it is dark. During the long night, Dragonfly hibernates. It uses the nuclear heat just to keep its joints from freezing solid. It trickle charges a massive lithium-ion battery bank. It hoards energy. When the sun rises, it wakes up. It checks the weather. It talks to Earth. And then it spins up those 8 rotors. The sound will be alien. The atmosphere is nitrogen, denser than ours. Sound travels differently there. It would be a deep, throbbing hum, louder than on Earth, carrying further. The drone climbs. It doesn't just hover, it goes up to a few thousand feet. From that vantage point, it can see for miles. It becomes its own reconnaissance satellite. It flies for a few miles, photographing the terrain, mapping the geology. Then it picks a new spot and lands. This is the hop. Imagine if the Curiosity rover on Mars could decide to check out a mountain 10 miles away and be there in an hour. That is the capability we are unlocking. We are compressing decades of driving into a single morning. The primary target is a crater named Selk. Selk is special. It's a place where the alien chemistry of Titan might have met liquid water. Titan is covered in organics. The sky is full of them. Ultraviolet light from the distant sun hits methane molecules high in the atmosphere. It breaks them apart. The carbon and hydrogen atoms scramble and reconnect. They form complex chains, propane, acetylene, benzene, and eventually they form heavy, complex goop called tholins. It rains from the sky like a slow, sticky snow. It coats everything in a layer of hydrocarbons. These are the building blocks of life, the raw bricks, but they are dry and frozen. To get biology, you usually need to add water. You need a solvent to let the chemistry get interesting. Titan has water, lots of it, but it's all frozen into the bedrock. It's as hard as granite. That's why we're going to Selk Crater. Millions of years ago, a meteor slammed into Titan at that spot. The energy of the impact was massive. It melted the ice crust instantly. For a few thousand years, Selk was a melt pool, a lake of liquid water on the surface. The organic rain fell into that warm water. The tholins mixed with the H2O. It was a prebiotic soup pot. It sat there, simmering, allowing complex reactions to happen. Amino acids might have formed, proteins might have folded. Then the crater froze over, the soup turned to ice. But the evidence is still there, locked in the freezer, waiting for someone to come and check. Dragonfly has drills in its landing skids. It's not just looking, it's tasting. It will drill into the frozen slush of the crater floor. Pneumatic suction, basically a high-tech vacuum, pulls the dust up into the body of the drone. It feeds the dust into an instrument called Draco. Draco is a mass spectrometer. It vaporizes the sample and weighs the molecules. We are looking for something very specific. We are looking for handedness. Molecules can have a shape. They can be left-handed or right-handed. In a lab, chemical reactions produce a 50-50 mix. It's random. But life is picky. Life on Earth uses only left-handed amino acids. If Dragonfly finds a sample where all the molecules are left-handed, that's a smoking gun. It means biology was involved. It means something was selecting the building blocks. But let's step back. Why is Titan so weird? Why does it look like Earth? It's a case of convergent evolution, but for geology. On Earth, we have a water cycle. Rain, rivers, oceans, evaporation. On Titan, we have a methane cycle. At -290 degrees Fahrenheit, methane exists as a liquid. So you have methane rain falling from methane clouds. It flows into methane rivers that carve valleys through the ice rock. It settles into methane lakes near the poles. These lakes are vast. Some are larger than Lake Superior. And they are dead calm. The Cassini probe bounced radar off them and found they were mirror smooth. Imagine a black sea of liquid natural gas perfectly still, stretching to the horizon. Dragonfly won't visit the lakes. They are too far north. It's sticking to the equatorial dunes. But even the dunes are strange. On Earth, sand is silica, quartz, ground-up rock. On Titan, the sand is those tholins. It's organic plastic granules. The wind blows them into massive drifts that look exactly like the dunes of Namibia. But they are electrostatically charged. They might cling together like styrofoam packing peanuts. Dragonfly has to land on this stuff. It has to take off from it. The engineers have spent years testing landing gear in Titan chambers on Earth. They use crushed walnut shells and plastic beads to simulate the Titan sand. They chill the air to cryogenic temperatures. They pump in nitrogen. They are trying to predict the unpredictable. Because once Dragonfly lands, there is no repair crew. If a motor freezes, the mission changes. Dragonfly can fly with a lost rotor, but the margins get thinner. If the drill gets stuck, it has to abandon the drill bit and use a backup. The autonomy system is the real pilot. It maps the terrain in 3D. It identifies hazards, rocks, steep slopes, holes. It assigns a safety score to every patch of ground it sees. If the primary landing site looks bad, it diverts, all within seconds. This is the legacy of the Mars landings. The sky crane that lowered Perseverance taught us how to automate the terror. But Dragonfly adds a new dimension, verticality. We will get aerial photography of an alien moon, not from orbit, but from bird's eye view. We will see the layering of the sediments, the flow patterns of the ancient rivers. We might even see cryovolcanoes. There is evidence that Titan pushes water up from below, like lava. Instead of molten rock, it erupts slushy ice and ammonia. If Dragonfly finds a cryovolcano, it's looking at material from the deep interior. Titan has a subsurface ocean. Deep under the ice crust, there is liquid water. It's kept liquid by tidal flexing, the gravity of Saturn stretching and squeezing the moon. That deep ocean is one of the best places in the solar system to look for existing life. But we can't drill through 50 miles of ice. Not yet. So we look at the surface. We look for the stuff that leaked out. We are playing detective, looking for fingerprints at the crime scene. The mission is scheduled for about 3 years. That's the prime mission. But the nuclear battery will last for decades. If the drone survives the harsh environment, it could keep exploring for a long time. It could travel hundreds of miles. It could climb out of the crater and head for the mountains. Yes, Titan has mountains, ridges of ice thrust up by tectonic forces. They are coated in the orange haze, looming over the black dunes. The visuals of this mission will be unlike anything we've seen. Mars is sharp, dusty, and red. The moon is stark, gray, and black. Titan is soft. The light is diffused by the haze. There are no hard shadows. It's a twilight world. High noon on Titan looks like deep dusk on Earth. But Dragonfly has LED headlights. It carries its own sun. It has microscopes to look at the grains of sand. It has a seismometer to listen for Titan quakes. If the ice crust cracks or shifts, we will feel it. We will know how active the moon is. There is a philosophical angle here, too. We are looking for life as we don't know it. What if life on Titan doesn't use water? What if it lives in the liquid methane? The chemistry would have to be radically different. Cell membranes on Earth are made of lipids, fats. They work in water. In methane, those membranes would dissolve. Some scientists have proposed azotosms, membranes made of nitrogen compounds. They would work at super cold temperatures. They would be flexible in liquid methane. It's a long shot. Most chemists think it's unlikely. But if Dragonfly finds organized structures in the methane-soaked sand, if it finds chemistry that repeats itself, repairs itself, that breaks biology wide open. It means life isn't a water thing. It's an information thing. It means the universe is teeming with life, even in the places we thought were dead. That's the high-stakes bet. But even if the sand is dead, the mission is a triumph. We are learning how to operate in the outer solar system. We are learning how to fly in heavy atmospheres. This technology scales. Imagine a larger drone on Titan, or a drone on Venus, if we can solve the heat. Dragonfly is the Wright brothers moment for planetary science. Until now, we have been crawling. Now, we are learning to fly. The launch is set for the late 2020s. The arrival is in the mid-2030s. It's a long wait, but space is big. When Dragonfly enters that atmosphere, it will be the culmination of thousands of careers. People have spent their entire lives studying Titan from a distance, trying to interpret fuzzy radar blobs, trying to guess what the spectra mean. Dragonfly is the ground truth. It is the answer key. It will settle arguments that have been raging since the Voyager flybys in the 1980s. Is the methane replenished by volcanoes, or is it running out? Are the dunes active, moving with the wind, or are they fossilized? We will watch the weather. We will see clouds form and dissipate. We might even see rain. Imagine capturing a video of methane raindrops hitting the ground. That alone is worth the price of admission. The camera suite is comprehensive. Forward-looking, downward-looking, panoramic. We will get the selfie. The drone sitting on the alien sands, rotors stationary, Saturn in the sky. Actually, Saturn is tricky. Titan is tidally locked. One side always faces Saturn. Depending on where Dragonfly lands, Saturn might be high in the sky or hidden forever. But the rings? If we are on the right side, the rings would span the sky. Through the haze, they would look like a ghostly arc, a constant reminder of where we are. This is the frontier. Mars is becoming a known quantity. We have maps. We have weather reports. Titan is still the wild. It is the deep woods. And there are hazards we probably haven't thought of. Static electricity is a big worry. The dry, cold air might make the drone build up a massive charge. When it lands, could it arc to the ground? Could it fry a sensor? The engineers have put static wicks on the rotors, like on airplanes, to bleed off the charge. But we won't know if it works until we get there. Then there is the dust, the organic grit. Will it gum up the rotors? Will it coat the camera lenses? Dragonfly is designed to be robust, but space has a way of finding the weak point. That's why the autonomy is so critical. The drone has to protect itself. If the wind gets too high, it refuses to fly. If the battery temp is too low, it stays asleep. It is a survivalist robot. The sheer distance makes you realize how small our neighborhood is. Radio waves traveling at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, take 80 minutes to get there. A command sent from Earth. Take a picture. 80 minutes later, the drone hears it. It takes the picture. 80 minutes after that, we see the result. A 3-hour round trip for a single interaction. That delay is why we need AI. We are severing the umbilical cord. We are trusting the machine to be the explorer. This is the future of spaceflight. Not remote control, but remote agency. Giving our machines the curiosity and the caution to walk the path for us. And what a path it is. The dunes of Shangri-La are vast and dark. They cover millions of square miles, a sea of organic sand. Dragonfly will be a tiny speck in that vastness. But that speck carries the curiosity of 8 billion people. It carries our need to know where we came from. Because if life started on Titan, even if it didn't get past the single-cell stage, it proves we aren't a fluke. It proves that the universe wants to be alive, and that realization is worth a 7-year flight into the cold. So in 2034, keep an eye on the news. Watch for the headline. Watch for the first image. A view from the window of a helicopter, flying through the orange fog of a moon that should not exist. We are going back to Titan, and this time, we're staying for a while. The rotors are spinning up, the systems are green. Dragonfly is ready to hunt.